Nora lived in the kind of town people only ever drove through, a smudge of civilization tucked between empty fields and the edge of a forest that locals simply called the Hollow. She liked that about it. After years of loud roommates and a relationship that ended with shouting in a rainy parking lot, peace was exactly what she wanted. Her rented cottage sat at the end of a long gravel road, the last house before the tree line. No neighbors to wave at in the morning, no cars buzzing by, just silence. Well, mostly silence. It had been 3 nights since she moved in, and every night, at 3:17 a.m., she woke up. Not from a nightmare. There were no dreams at all. Her eyes just snapped open as though something had been watching her. The first night, she laughed it off. The second, she sat up and listened. The third, she got out of bed and walked through the house barefoot, heart hammering. The air felt different at that hour, thicker, heavier. Even the insects outside were quiet. Tonight, she told herself, she wouldn't check. Tonight she would stay in bed. During the day, life was almost too perfect. Nora worked remotely as a book editor, her laptop perched on the kitchen counter as the sun lit up the wooden floor. She made coffee, took calls, read manuscripts, and tried to ignore the occasional rustle of movement from the woods. The Hollow had a presence, a hushed stillness that pressed in from all sides. When she first arrived, the property manager had given her a strange warning. Don't go walking in there after dark. The trees carry sound. You don't want to hear what they bring back. She had laughed politely, assuming it was just small-town superstition. Still, when she heard something call her name from the woods that afternoon, she froze. Nora. The sound was faint, stretched thin, like someone speaking from far away down a tunnel. Her heart leapt into her throat. She turned toward the treeline, scanning for movement. Nothing. She waited. The breeze stirred the leaves. Somewhere, a crow cawed. When no one emerged, she shook herself, muttering, "You're overtired, that's all." She went back inside, locking the door behind her, a habit she hadn't had before moving here. By the time night fell, she had convinced herself it was just her imagination. Small towns were supposed to be quiet, weren't they? She wasn't used to hearing every little sound, the hum of the fridge, the floorboards groaning under her own steps, the wind creeping around the eaves. But when 3:17 came, Nora woke up again. Her breath fogged in the room, which was strange, because it was late summer and she hadn't turned the AC that low. The sound came again. Nora. This time it was inside the house. She sat bolt upright, pulse thudding in her ears. Nora. It wasn't loud, not a shout, not even a whisper. It was the sound of someone standing right next to her, speaking gently into her ear. But when she spun around, the room was empty. She scrambled out of bed, flicked on every light, checked every closet and cupboard. No one was there. She stayed awake until dawn, drinking coffee and staring at the front door, half expecting it to open by itself. By morning, she was exhausted, but a strange determination had settled in her chest. Whatever this was, she wasn't going to be scared out of her own home. If there was someone out there, some prankster, some trespasser, she would catch them. But as she stood at the edge of the woods later that day, staring into the Hollow's endless shadows, she felt it again, the strange, pressing silence. Like something was holding its breath, waiting for her to step inside. Nora bought motion lights the next day. 2 for the front, 1 for the back porch, and 1 that aimed straight into the treeline. She told herself it was just for peace of mind, something practical, something rational. But as she stood in the hardware aisle, clutching the box with white-knuckled hands, she knew she was lying. She wasn't just afraid. She was starting to believe something really was out there. That night, she stayed awake until midnight, working at the kitchen table. She left every light in the house on, the glow spilling through the windows like a warning. Nothing happened until 3:17 a.m. The click of the motion sensor woke her, a soft, mechanical sound. Nora grabbed the flashlight she kept beside the bed and crept to the back door. Through the window, she saw the yard bathed in a pale white glow. Something had triggered the sensor. She pressed her face to the glass, heart slamming against her ribs. The yard was empty. No raccoons. No deer. Not even swaying branches. Just empty grass, and the line where it met the woods darker than the night sky. She almost went back to bed, until she saw it. A shape, standing just inside the trees. At first, she thought it was just the trunk of an oddly shaped tree. But then it moved, a slow, tilting motion like a head cocking to one side. Her breath left her in a rush. The thing didn't step forward. Didn't lunge. Didn't do anything except stand there, watching. Then the light went out, and the shape was gone. She barely slept the rest of the night, lying awake until dawn. When morning finally came, she did something she'd promised herself she wouldn't do. She called the property manager. "Yeah, I told you not to go near the hollow," he said, his voice low and irritated. "Whatever you saw, leave it alone." "That's not an answer," she snapped. "Is there some kind of, I don't know, local creep? Someone messing with me?" A pause. When he spoke again, his voice was almost sympathetic. "You're hearing him now, aren't you?" The words made her stomach turn to ice. "Who?" "The Hollow Man." Nora gripped the phone so hard it hurt. "That's just a story." "Yeah," he said. "That's what we all wish." And he hung up. The rest of the day dragged on like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She kept glancing out the window, unable to focus on her work. By sunset, a storm had rolled in, thunder grumbling low over the hills, the sky bruised and heavy with rain. She told herself the lights would keep her safe. But when 3:17 came, the power went out. The house plunged into blackness. And then, from the kitchen, a sound. Knock, knock, knock. Not at the door, on the window. She turned on the flashlight, hands shaking. The beam swept across the kitchen, catching on the glass. A pale face stared back at her. Not a human face, at least, not exactly. It was too long, the skin stretched too tight. Its eyes were black, bottomless pits. Nora dropped the flashlight. By the time she scrambled to pick it up, the window was empty. She ran to the door, bolted it, locked every latch she could find. And then she heard it, a sound that froze her blood. Her own voice, calling softly from the woods. "Nora, come outside." She spent the rest of the storm hiding in the bathroom with a kitchen knife, whispering to herself just to fill the silence. When dawn finally broke, she crept outside to check the yard. There were footprints in the mud, deep, bare prints leading up to her kitchen window. But they didn't just stop there. They circled the house. Once, twice, 3 times. As though something had been pacing around her all night. The night after the footprints, Nora made a decision. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She brewed black coffee, loaded her phone with recordings of white noise, and sat by the back door with the porch light on, staring at the woods. Midnight came and went. The woods stayed still. But at 3:17 a.m., the light clicked on. This time, she was ready. She grabbed the flashlight, yanked open the door, and stepped outside. The air felt wrong, heavy, electric, like standing beneath a power line. The shape was waiting for her. It stood just beyond the first line of trees, tall and thin and wrong, its arms hanging too long at its sides. Its head tilted again, that strange, bird-like motion, and she felt the pressure in her skull. "Nora." The voice wasn't sound this time. It vibrated inside her mind, cold and damp as fog. "You hear me now?" Her throat closed. She couldn't run, couldn't scream. Her body moved without her. 1 step. 2. Until she stood at the tree line. The Hollow Man didn't move, but the trees seemed to bend toward him, guiding her deeper. The forest swallowed her flashlight beam. Her bare feet sank into wet earth. Behind her, the house looked small and far away, like something from another life. "You called me." "I didn't," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if it was true. "You wake at my hour. You wait at my edge. You are hollow too." The words made something inside her crack. She thought of the quiet house, the empty bed, the endless, gnawing ache she had carried since the breakup that drove her out here. She had told herself she moved for peace. But maybe she had been looking for something else. The clearing opened before her. She didn't remember walking into it, she just knew she was standing there now, the trees forming a perfect ring around her. The hollow man stood at the center, taller than she'd realized, his form shifting slightly as if he were more shadow than flesh. When he raised a hand, she felt her heart stutter. Step closer. Her body obeyed before her mind could stop it. When she was close enough to see the ridges of his too long face, she saw something that made her breath catch. His skin was like a mirror, pale, smooth, and reflective. And in it she saw her own face. But not as she was. She was gaunt, hollow-eyed, smiling a wide, unnatural grin. The image leaned forward in the reflection, even though she hadn't moved. "You are mine now," the voice said. Nora dropped to her knees, clutching her head. "No," she screamed, though the sound barely escaped her lips. "I'm not. You already chose. Every night you woke. Every step you took brought you here." He crouched in front of her, impossibly fast, until his face was level with hers. "Say it." She didn't want to. She wanted to run, to wake up, to go back to the house and lock the door and pretend none of this was real. But she couldn't move. Her reflection in his face was already nodding. "Yes," she heard herself whisper. The clearing went silent. Then came a rush of wind, carrying with it whispers that circled the trees, voices she didn't recognize, dozens of them, all whispering the same thing. Welcome her. The hollow man's head tilted one last time. Then he was gone. The clearing was empty, the air still, the forest suddenly just a forest again. Nora collapsed forward, her hands sinking into the dirt. Her ears rang with the sound of her own breathing, except it wasn't just hers. Somewhere behind her, another breath matched it, perfectly in sync. She didn't turn around. She didn't have to. The hollow was silent after that night, but not empty. Nora woke on the floor of the forest just as dawn broke. Her head throbbed, her throat raw from screaming, though she couldn't remember doing it. The last thing she recalled was standing in the clearing, the hollow man's towering figure before her, its head tilting the way it always did, as if studying her. Then the voice. Not from outside, but from inside her skull. "You are hollow too." She didn't know what it meant. She only knew that she had said yes. The police found her later that morning, wandering barefoot on the edge of the road. She told them she'd been sleepwalking, the simplest lie she could think of. She couldn't tell them about the footprints, the knocking, the face in the window. They would never believe her. She went back to the house the next day. Everything looked normal. But when she tried to work, the words on the page twisted and blurred. She couldn't focus. The silence in the cottage felt wrong now, no longer comforting, but expectant. At night, she heard it again. Not her name. Not the knock. Just breathing. Slow, patient breathing, not coming from outside this time, but from the corner of her room. She never turned to look. She was too afraid she would see her own face staring back. Weeks passed. Nora stopped sleeping entirely, stopped answering calls, stopped trying to convince herself it had been a hallucination. Because she knew the truth now. The hollow man hadn't left. He was with her, not haunting her house, but inside her. Sometimes she caught her reflection doing something her body hadn't, a smile that lingered too long, a tilt of the head that wasn't hers. The worst was when she heard herself whisper, just before dawn, "Come outside." The first time it happened, she slammed her hands over her mouth. The second time, she didn't. And by the third, she was standing barefoot at the tree line again, whispering to the dark. People in town started talking. A jogger went missing near the hollow. Then a teenager. Then an entire search party disappeared in the woods. Each time, Nora sat on her porch, listening. And each time, at 3:17 a.m., she heard faint, distant screams, and then silence. One night, she saw a light in the trees. A flashlight beam weaving through the branches. Someone else had come to look for the missing. She watched them for a long time before realizing she was no longer afraid. In fact, she felt something close to relief. When the beam turned toward her house, she stepped off the porch. The forest welcomed her. She didn't remember crossing the clearing, didn't remember opening her mouth. But when the stranger called out, asking if someone was there, she heard her own voice answer. Not the voice she remembered from before. A hollow one. By morning, the stranger was gone. And Nora was sitting at her kitchen table, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. When she smiled, her reflection in the window smiled back. But this time, it didn't wait for her to move first. Closing image. The cottage sits empty now, overgrown with weeds. But at 3:17 a.m., the lights still click on, triggered by something pacing just out of sight. And sometimes, if you're quiet, you can hear a woman's voice from the edge of the woods. Come outside.